Dune was the first movie that I went to the theater to see since before COVID.
Oh,
it was my first, and it's
Wow.
my first and only time back to the theater. I snuck out and went by myself to the theater, and it was a beautiful experience and a beautiful performance as well.
Oh,
and
well, you were so great in Blade, you know, in Blade Runner. I mean, what was your experience with Denis?
you guys say Duke Leto?
Duke Leto, yeah.
It's my fucking last name, but
I know, man. I know. We're in.
Action.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. Good to be here with you. I'm very excited to, of all the people in the world that I could be speaking to, I'm happy that it's you.
Oh, well, likewise, man. Likewise. We have a lot of, seems like synchronicity with a lot of things, you know.
We do have a few things in common. I didn't know where you were going to go with that, but I believe we both lived in Louisiana, Virginia,
Yeah.
DC. I don't know if people conflated DC and Virginia, but I
That's
lived in all
true.
three
No.
of those places.
Yeah.
I lived in Northwest DC. I lived outside of DC in Virginia for a little while, and I lived in Louisiana.
I didn't know that. Well, so
yeah.
it keeps, it keeps lining up.
And
That's wild.
we were both, we both make music.
Yeah.
And we both opened for Green Day.
Did you open for Green Day? That's
We
amazing.
did. I mean, technically it was a festival in Italy.
Same.
Was it? Yeah. It was
Yeah.
a festival in Italy. And, but we played right before Green Day, and it was crazy because this storm came out of nowhere. I mean, it was blue skies, and then this storm came out of nowhere. These winds and everything, the stage is rocking, and they shut the show down during our last song. And then Green Day actually never played. So technically, I don't know if I did open for Green Day, but we were on the same bill.
I feel like even we're even more of a technicality because we played at the same festival, not even on the same stage.
Got
But
it. Well, I
we
did a
played
lot of
beforehand.
those.
You know?
Yeah. We had plenty of those.
How did you balance your acting aspirations with the music in those early days, like in '98, '99, and as you guys kept touring and struggling to get?
I mean, I
signed?
really sacrificed the acting, to be honest. Were you on stage as an actor before? First, you were on stage as a musician and then an actor?
I mean, I guess like 5th and 6th grade, I really got into plays and, doing, it was also a really turbulent time at home with my parents divorcing. And so it just suddenly seemed like
But how did you get into play?
the assignment was to write write a paragraph short story as an animal on Noah's Ark. And I wrote a musical that was like 20 pages. And I brought it in, and my teacher, Mrs. Stuckey, I still remember her, she was like, "We're going to make this into a play, and you're going to be the main character, the platypus." And it was like a reluctant platypus that he didn't want to go on. He didn't believe it. He didn't want to go on it. And so we did this play, and that was really like the first, because it was also a play I had written, and I was starring in it, and it was pretty amazing. And then the next year, it was a weird Christian school where the plays that we would do were like where you just kind of get up and lip sync to a pre-existing track that would be like a Christian story song about like the devil and Jesus battling in hell, having a boxing match in hell. And then I played the devil, and I scared the teacher, and then my girls started being interested in me, and I'm like, this is amazing. I found my calling.
As soon as you play the devil, the girls came running.
I mean, that's when it happened. And then as soon as I, like a couple days afterwards, when she saw that I really wasn't the devil, that didn't work out. But anyway, that kind of started it. And then once I got into high school, I did a little bit of drama stuff in the beginning, but then I quickly moved over to music, and I found this little crew, and we just started playing all the time. And my dad was kind of he's played music his whole life and recorded music and made movies. So, just home movies with us. And so that I really got the bug from him.
Yeah.
Do you approach any of your roles or breaking down a script or a character musically?
I mean, the things that actually inform me more are like, the work ethic that or the habits that you make as an actor, I think it's a really great place to learn how to work and work hard and be really focused. A movie set, I think, is great training ground just for life. I think it's sometimes it's a bit unreasonable for the rest of life, but it's certainly, you know, people work really hard in the movies. And I think there's this misconception that people, you know, I'm not talking just actors, but just, you know, movie sets are intense places to work. You know, the pressure is on, every minute is very expensive, and you have very limited time. You know, the things that I learned, you know, is if you work as an editor, certainly you're going to learn about music. Music teaches you about editing. They both teach you about acting, timing, melody. In the case of Paolo and House of Gucci, you know, the voice was very musical. And I'm sure that lilting, melodious voice that kind of had a really wide range and specific register, working as a singer for so many years, sure, that's taught me to be mindful about that.
Or flexibility.
Accents,
flexibility
right?
Within your voice.
Yeah, the flexibility. Yeah. And even just awareness of the voice, too. I'm a big fan of, you know, voice work when actors not only transform their, you know, other parts, but the voice I find to be an important key into character.
You wanted to make me cry. Nobody has ever said that to me. Nobody.
Paolo, why don't you have your own line?
These are just mock-ups.
What strikes me a lot about your work is your commitment to the transformational aspects of it. And sometimes it can be just a couple little things that move it away from what I know you as a person, and other things are much more you know, much more of a full body commitment face, you know, all those kind of things. So yeah, how did you find that way of working, that kind of commitment?
You know what it is, Oscar? I like to see people die for it. I really do. I like to see people bleed for it a bit, whether you're a painter or a singer or whatever it is. I love commitment, you know, in athletes and adventure, outdoor adventure, you know, mountaineering. And, you know, I think that kind of acting for me it's big wall climbing. It's the Himalayas, so to speak. And there are a lot of different pursuits that are beautiful, but for me, I love to watch other people do that. So I've always been attracted to that. And as I've gotten older, you know, I'm really just struck with this intense gratitude and humility that you know, it's like a dream that you wake up and you're being asked to do these kind of things, right? Because you fight, you know how it is, you fight so long for these opportunities, and wow, people are coming to you to solve difficult problems. And I'm excited by that. I think without that, I wouldn't be acting anymore, you know? Yeah.
Which is that why you gravitated towards Paolo?
Yeah, I think so. When I read the script, I just fell in love with the character. I think when I called Ridley, everyone was like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, I didn't know what he looked like, and I didn't really care. That wasn't important to me at that time. I just was struck by his heart and his humor. I loved, you know, he had an impish quality about him. He had, you know, this spirit that I really related to, like this desire to make something special and to share that with the world. And of course, we all know a lot about failure as well. People love to talk about
the success.
Well, people love to talk about failures too, I guess. But, you know, in hindsight, we always look at the peaks, not the valleys. But, you know, we know a lot about failure. And I really was attracted to this role for all of those reasons.
It's such a heartbreaking scene, the one with Jeremy Irons, when he comes in and, you know, shows all of his drawings and his designs, and there's so much joy and excitement and the heartbreak that happens. I mean, it really feels like it's a character that's just trying to climb a greased pole the whole time.
That's a good way to put it. And I mean, that really is exactly what his life was like. And the people closest to him were the very same people who never heard him, never supported him. It was his family. And I remember in that scene, like it was wild. It was my first scene Of course, I love Jeremy Irons is just a legend. I don't know if you've worked with him yet, but
no,
it's a legend. And you know, I was literally and figuratively shitting my pants. You know, I could imagine what kind of diaper Paolo would wear, but and it was, you know, it's risky. It was the first, you know, I was literally just, you know, barfing Paolo up onto the set that day, and everyone was kind of seeing this for the first time, and you know, it's exciting and it was horrifying and it was all of those things.
Don't even look at me, you lying sack of potatoes. Shut your fucking mouth.
Outside the church, you shut your fucking mouth.
Alessandro.
But I remember two things: seeing the drawings that I laid out, and I said, "Wow, they're actually pretty good." So it made it much more heartbreaking when I laid all these things out and people, and we had worked on this stuff, and you know, it's like, you know, this work is pretty good. There's no reason that he should be shamed like this. And then Ridley comes up and says, you know, I'd like you to pull your pecker out and piss all over this scarf. I knew it from that moment. You know, he had given me this wonderful gift, and it was the freedom to fail absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that. You know, I want to be on the edge. I want to be at that breaking point where I kind of question my own abilities, where I'm on that tightrope. I love it as a singer, and I love as an actor. Now, what about you? Do you think about that kind of thing, or is that something that's just now you've done so much? I was looking at your filmography. You need to give other people a chance to work, my friend. I mean, you're in every
bastard.
1,000 movies here. Give us a fighting chance.
I know. It's
but
too much,
is that important to you when you're working? And the other thing I want to ask you about is working with our heroes, like Paul Schrader or something like that. Because, you know, for me, it's kind of like one of the great joys I've been having working with Denzel and Al and Ridley. And I know you've worked with Ridley too, but maybe tell me about those two things a little bit, because I'm kind of fascinated.
Yeah, I've always been drawn to experiences that are way outside of my own, and those tend to be the characters that I get excited about. As I've kind of done more and more work, I feel like, as opposed to it feeling outside of myself, what's exciting is finding something that seems so far away and finding that it exists somehow through my imaginative experience, that I bridge that vast gap. And I think for me, that's really the exciting bit, as I see that gap close and close and close, and suddenly feeling like I'm living a life, even for just a few months, of an experience that was before completely unknown to me, but suddenly now exists. I think that's a really magical thing that happens. And sometimes, like you said, it can just be the voice being placed in a different place. You know, here this character is a bit more in the face, nasal, and suddenly it drops here to the chest, and that difference, you know, creates a whole, you know, chain reaction of differences, and the way you move and the way you hold your chin and your shoulders, and for me, it's not even communicative, because it's not trying to communicate that so an audience sees that necessarily, but it's an expressive form. In the Schrader film, learning a new way of penmanship. I didn't really know how to write in cursive, but I felt that the character would write in cursive because it's about control, and not that anyone would know that I didn't act. Oscar doesn't write that way, but for me, it just, you know, the idea of staying, you know, making a big change, or, you know, I just did something where I had to, I'm English, the character is English, and I stayed in the accent. Really, it was just to not let the character leave me too much, and so that I always felt comfortable even having a normal conversation, and no energy was going to putting it on. You know, it was just already there, so that there wasn't a big difference between normal life and action, so that there was just a flow. So yeah, that's something that I've been looking at a lot more, is flow.
So I've talked to Paul Schrader before. I mean, what a genius, and what an incredible, unique voice. Did you read that script and say, "Oh, I have to play this"? What was the thing about it that really attracted you to the role?
One of the first auditions I ever had was for Paul Schrader when I'd gotten out of drama school. It was in like a little strip mall in the valley somewhere, and
Do you remember what it
little
was
black
for?
box theater. It was for a movie called The Jesuit that never ended up happening, but I had gotten the part.
Oh,
so that's
wow.
the first time I had met Paul, and I got the role. I remember it was like at a black box theater on a stage, and he was in the audience, and you know there was a little bit like of a setup, and obviously they had cameras, but it felt much more like a theater audition. And I'd gotten the role, and then he had sent me the DVD of all the auditions, which was a very strange thing. I'm not sure why. I asked him recently, and he's like, "Oh, that must have been a mistake." But then the movie never ended up happening, and we kind of stayed in touch. And then when I saw First Reformed, I just wrote to him to tell him how amazing I thought it was, and just what a beautiful film. And then a year later, he sent me an email saying, "I wrote a script for you. Well, not for you, but you're the first person I'm going to." And and he's like, "Would you take a look?" And I immediately read it, and I didn't totally understand it the first time I read it. I didn't really get it because there was so much, you know, he writes almost in a Harold Pinter kind of way. There's so many pauses, there's so much space in between the lines. He writes a lot of unconscious flow. And so I didn't understand it, but I knew I needed to do it, and I knew I wanted to do it. And it felt like it had been a while since I had done something that was so point of view character study. And it was a tiny little movie, you know, $3 million basically in Biloxi for 20 days.
20
and then
days?
I committed to it and spent,
Wow.
yeah. Met with cardistry experts just so it could look like I knew my way around a deck, and did a lot of research on trauma, and then went to my drama school with one of my old teachers, Moni Yakim, who's been there since the beginning of Juilliard. Movement is this Israeli movement teacher. And we just worked with like neutral masks and movement and rhythm.
What's a neutral mask?
Basically just a blank mask that has no expression on it, because it felt like this is a guy that wears a mask, and especially when you're playing poker or when you're at a table, someone that doesn't want to be seen. So if you take away the face, what other things can you express with?
Chew, goddamn COVID.
Bless you.
Sorry.
So yeah, it was that kind of stuff, you know, and it was just it felt like you said, a full immersive experience.
Wow. And as far as the PTSD part of it all, tell me about that and what you learned and what that was like to kind of be in that place.
Yeah, one of the books that Paul mentioned was The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yeah, I've read it.
You've read that. Yeah, so it's, you know, seminal writing
Yeah.
on post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that was a big point of reference for us. And just the unusual story that it's about someone that has trauma because of the pain he inflicted on others.
Yeah.
Nothing can justify what we did. Your father understood that. If you were there, you could understand.
And then the national trauma, you know, that's what Paul's amazing at, is grafting a personal story onto a bigger one. You know, in First Reformed, it was this man who was dying of a disease on top of the world that's dying of this, you know, environmental disease. And in ours, it was, you know, a person's personal guilt grafted onto a nation's guilt for what they've caused to others. So, it was surprising and astounding. And also, you know, to, like you said, working with these legends, you know, to be on a set with Paul, you know, only doing a couple takes, but he was such a master of the craft, you know, something as little as, you know, he'd come over to look at a shot and he's like, no, that's not our movie. That's our movie. You know, the tilt of a camera angle, that kind of mastery was just astounding.
Well, it was a beautiful performance, as always. Your consistency is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm in awe. I'm in awe at your ability to be so natural and to be so brave with your subtlety. I mean, that's a real art, and something that I happen to be terrible at.
I disagree. I remember you said that on the last one, but I don't think so, man. I mean, if you think back at like, because I immediately thought, I was like, I don't think that's true, man. Like Fight Club.
Your weaknesses, but have you worked with Willem Dafoe before?
I did a film called At Eternity's Gate, a Julian Schnabel film about Van Gogh, where I played Paul Gauguin. I came and shot for 3 or 4 days, and he came and did the same. So he shot on card counter for about 3 or 4 days. And he's exactly the same, whether he's the star of the film in every single shot, or he's just coming in to do a little bit. He's just as committed. He's just as light and easy. He's he was just like a consummate professional and such a inspiration. And actually, his approach to things, talking to him about that, has really changed the way I approach things now.
You know, I feel like Paul Schrader in your film continues a tradition that was really impactful for me, and that's the tradition of the art movie. I feel like he still makes the art film. And when I was young, and even going to film school, I was a painter first, and then I changed my major to film. You know, I would just go to the art house theater. I don't even know if they have. I mean, sure, Angelica's there, or whatever, but I didn't even know if a young person would know what an art house theater is. You know, where they show porno movies or something. But it really was, that was my teacher. That was my, boot camp was art films of the 60s, 70s, and 80s mainly, and then into the early 90s. But I'm so glad that people are still making some of those films. What are your where are we going in the future with that? Where is that? Where is that ecosystem of that kind of culture of filmmaking?
You're right. Like that was another feeling being on set with him. It felt subversive and punk rock. It's really just his personal expression, and he purposefully does things to frustrate the audience at times. He's like, I know what you want here, I know what you want, and I'm not going to give it to you. And that's part of this, the uncomfortable aspect of it. That's a necessary part of this story and this style of storytelling. But it's getting harder and harder these days. And luckily, I do think there is a lot of risk being taken in the streaming world that is affording a lot of risk. I mean, and something to talk about too. We're both another synchronistic thing that's happening. Synchronized thing is we jumped into the world of the Marvel hero. We both got these guys coming out that we did, both starting with the letter M.
Moon Knight and Morbius. And both interesting because titles a lot of people are going to be introduced to for the first time, right?
I'd never heard of Moon Knight before, and I collected comics when I was younger. I'd heard of Morbius, but I'd never heard of Moon Knight. But the fact that, I don't know, and I don't know how the process was for you because it's a feature film, we're a limited series. There was a lot of room to try stuff because there wasn't the pressure that, we got to make sure we make however many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on the opening weekend. So we could try stuff. We could, make it very point of view. We could make very weird decisions. And I think that is, at the moment at least, and I don't imagine it's going to go backwards. At the moment, it feels like that's where more of the risk is being taken. Because it can,
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of talent going in that area. House of Gucci and Morbius are both exclusively in theaters. So we're kind of like raising the flag and marching forward, even in the midst of, COVID and everything. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, because House of Gucci did quite well.
Yeah, I mean, people went and saw the movie. I think it was a film a lot of people went back to the theaters for the first time, certain types of people. And that's a beautiful thing. I love cinema. I love theater, but I also love the idea that you can, creative people can be flexible and not penalized for doing different kinds of work. I mean, you remember a time back in the day, if you did a series, it was either the beginning or the cliche was that's where you went at the beginning or the end of your career. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's a beautiful thing. I like that there's the flexibility there. And
I mean, I still have that a little bit. It's been very hard to let that go, that idea. And the truth is, my love is the cinema. Like, I think there's something incredible about the craftsmanship it takes to distill a story to a couple hours, give or take, and with a beginning, middle, and end. There's something to me about the distillation and how powerful that can be. That's hard to beat for me,
Yeah, and with a movie like Dune, that's a big celebration in both ways, right? There was day and date, right? They saw it in theaters.
Yeah. That was
actually Dune was
the
first movie that I went to the theater to see since before COVID. It was my first, and it's my first and only time back to the theater. I snuck out and went by myself to the theater, and it was a beautiful experience and a beautiful performance as well.
You have my resignation.
You would deprive us of your talents at this time.
Sire, my honor demands.
They tried to take the life of my son! I don't give a damn about your honor. You want absolution? Go catch some spies.
Your Grace.
And
well, you were so great in Blade, in Blade Runner. I mean, what was your experience with Denis?
Yeah, we both have the Denis, and you guys say Duke Leto.
Duke Leto, yeah.
It's my fucking last name, but
I know, man. I know.
I'm a super fan of Dune. Super fan. Both the book and the first movie. I always loved the first film. I thought it was,
me too.
Genius. And
I saw the series too. I actually, when I got cast, I wrote to William Hurt, because he had played Duke Leto. And just got his vibe on it, and he's also his mind is vast and had so much to say.
Yeah, Denis, I mean, gifted madman, and Blade Runner was really a special one. I'm having these opportunities. I think it's just confirmation that we're living in a simulation because, Blade Runner, one of my favorite movies of all time, watched it 700 times at least. And then I end up in, the sequel, very strange. And then, there are these things just come into play. Certain actors that, like Al Pacino, for me, was a person that really taught me what was possible, taught me about commitment, taught me about choices, taught me about range, taught me about authenticity through his work over the years. And with Paolo Gucci, I mean, it's easy to notice that, but notice this probably for you, but I really felt like it was the opportunity of a lifetime. For me, Paolo was like, this is the last role I'm ever going to play and I'm done. The experience of getting on a set with Ridley, being there with Al, working with Jeremy, and of course, Lady Gaga and Adam Driver, just this phenomenal group of people. I wasn't going to be the person to squander that opportunity and show up and, embarrass myself or others. And I really made a decision early on that it was going to be, a test for me. It was a vision quest for me. It was like I was walking out to the desert for 30 days, with no food or water or something. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And also, full of joy. Like I was in love with the role, the experience, the challenge, the panic, the fear, and just buried in all of it. And I it's not like that every time, as we know, but having those moments and just that voice, having Al there. I remember one day on set, he just unleashed and he just gave it to me. He gave me that Pacino, that voice. Yeah. And it shook me to my core. And he brought something out of me in that moment. That was, Jeremy did too, that viciousness, that his way, Jeremy has a way of putting angles on words and syllables and consonants and throwing them at you like daggers, and they'll hit you in the gut and the heart and the brain. And it's just what a wonderful thing to work with these people. I mean, just so blown away by that.
To work with Pacino would be, I would love that so much. I remember he came to Hamlet, and I saw him up there sitting up in the audience, And you know, there's the moment
during
when,
the performance, you saw him.
yeah, I saw him. But I had invited him, so I knew he was coming. And so then the way we did it was very much like you talk to the people, and I see him up there, and I couldn't resist, and I, you know, because it's the moment when Hamlet sees the ghost of his father, and I say, "My father, methinks I see my father," and then after intermission, I come back, and he's like moved 3 rows behind and is wearing sunglasses now. Probably made him so uncomfortable. But then he was so sweet, and afterwards we went out and talked, and he even, you know, gave me like some thoughts about stuff and how he would do the "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave," and you know, so there, you know what, there are some plays I'd like to do. You know, I'd like to do The Caretaker by Harold Pinter. I'd like to do Leontes in The Winter's Tale. You know, those are some, and then there's just directors.
Why theater? What do you get out of theater? Why theater?
It's the writing, it's the plays, you know. I read those plays, and there's just something visceral that happens to me when I read them. Particularly with the Shakespeare's plays, it just, it like collapses time, you know, when I read something, and it feels so immediate and so true, and it's so old. It just feels like you're communing with something that's outside of time. And it's like a magical, chilling feeling. Do you have any interest in theater or any of that?
I mean, it seems like such an incredible commitment and character for that long a time. Aren't you just in the middle of that, saying like, just take me out the back and put me out of my misery? A
little bit, but that's like the Mount Everest climb, you know. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what Hamlet was. It felt like out in the wilderness for a very, very long time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a deep respect for that, and you know, it seems like something very daunting. But you know, maybe I need to come see you in a play, and then I'll get motivated to do it. But I don't think anyone's missing out on me not being in a play. So
I don't know, man. I feel like you'd have a lot to offer.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, my friend.
Yeah,
and,
likewise.
you know, I'm your big fan and admirer. You're a maverick, a rule breaker.